Hello, it's Blair of Chaos Costumes again to teach you more about Nomad. Today, we're gonna work on something that is functional? Not really, but I think you guys will enjoy doing it with me. So without further ado, let's go. So if you remember correctly, last time we made this cool little handbook thing and we worked on anatomy. This time we're gonna make another weapon. Going to make a bow. Yes, not one of those cutesy bows, a little weapony bow that does the things. I don't know. Anyway, but we won't need the sphere right now, so we'll hide it, but it'll come back soon. And we'll add a tube. And for some reason, my view is in perspective. I want it in orthographic. Then we'll zoom out, make sure it's squared up, turn on the grid and the magnet, and we'll stretch this out to the red line. What we're aiming for is just half of the bow. Then we'll add a mirror modifier under the y-axis. And then whatever we do to one half, it'll change the other half. And to get these sharp little edges, I'm just tapping the nodes. And then what I'm going to do is change the radius, just so I have a nice little taper, and then once again, to really point out these ends. And then I want to make the middle, not that small, the hand group more hand-sized. And then I'll change the profile. I want to make it this neat little guitar pick shape, but I want to change the profile where the handle is. And so I'll hit the three little dots, copy the original profile we made, paste it to all, and then I'm just going to make the handle profile a nice little circle. And then I'll copy that circle and just put it on the second node as well. Then I can change that diameter a little bit so it's not as weird. Now that I'm happy with the diameter of the handle, I'm going to add another tube and take it out of the mirror. And I'm going to spiral that tube. Turn off snapping two shapes up here. And change the profile. Make this a little smaller so I can see what I'm doing. And change the profile to look a little bit more interesting. Now I'll increase that spiral till it touches. Realizing I need to make it a little longer, because we'll wind up trimming off the ends. Now I can tighten that spiral to get those shapes to touch. Now I'll increase the division and validate that shape. Now I can turn on symmetry along the y-axis and use the rectangle tool to trim out those ends. Now I'm shrinking this shape a little bit so it fits inside the handle. Now I want to add little end caps to this handle, so I'm going to do that with a cylinder. And since it's in the mirror, it's going to make two shapes. And I'll shrink it down. And actually reduce the division. And I'll subdivide it to round out those edges. Now I want to make sure the symmetry is toggled to the z-axis and not the x-axis. Look at it from the bottom exactly. And I'll solo it and make this more a reflection of the shape of the bow. What I'm going to do is increase the division of the rest of the bow. Not too much because the geometry gets a little weird. And validate that shape. I'll just smooth out these harsh corners. Little spot is bothering me, so I'm just going to tuck it in. Ta-da! Now it's not a problem anymore. Now we can keep smoothing out these elbows. Elbows, the bow. I don't know. Elbow. I have no idea what bow is in Spanish. I'm just going to voxel remesh this thing so I can smooth it more effectively. There we go. Now I'm getting what I want. Making sure to avoid the very inner edge just to keep it sharp. What I'll go in and do is with the select mask, start blocking out some armor on this bow. So I'll use the polygon tool just to keep things clean and neat, and start adding locations where I want plates. And I'll validate that selection with the little green dot. Now I see what I'm working with. And I'll extract that. Let's see how much. Let's say an even number of 0.06. And I want to make sure I have the fill closing action selected when I extract it. Now I have my first armor plate, and I'm going to select that shape that we just made and add another layer to it using the same technique. Just hitting the little green circle and extracting the fill. I don't like how that's overlapping, so I'm just going to use the move tool to kind of push it in a little bit. The geometry got a little janky on the front, so I'll fix that real quick by trimming off this little hook on the end and smoothing out that weird geometry with a little less intensity. Just rinse and repeat the same technique to add more plates. And just masking off the shape and extracting with the fill closing action. Now that I have everything sorted out, let's clear out the mask. I want to flare out these armor pieces a little more with the move tool. Now that it's decisively more armor plated, I'm actually going to use the smooth operation to round out those edges. I'm trying to figure out how smooth I want it, because I'll need to use that operation for every piece. So let's say 20,000%. So I'll type that in. It's over 9,000!
It's over 9,000!
Still mean these a little weird, so I'm just going to trim off that little tippy bit. Flatten out those harsh corners that I made, and smooth it. Same with this guy. Now we get to use the lovely sphere that we saved, and I'll plop that down into the mirror. The sphere will be our feathers. Yes, I'm adding wings to this bow, because why not? So I'm just smushing it and stretching it to make it more feather-like. I'll drag it up and pull it out. I'm going to use the crease tool to add a little spine to this feather. What I want to crease is the lazy rope stabilizer, and then I can make a straight line a lot easier. Kind of think of it like driving. You're looking ahead instead of where you're at. But I didn't have the right filter on, so let's fix that. You want to make sure front-facing vertex only is toggled. Then I can drive a straight line down this feather. Got a little funky in the back, but I can work with that. I'll just smooth out this a little bit, so when I go to force symmetry, it's not making a big pocket. I'll just mirror it along the z-axis. And now it is a feather on both sides. But I want to get rid of that harsh termination, so I'll smooth it out. This feather's a little too thick, so I'm just going to thin it out a little bit. Now we get to make this feather a wing. So I'm just going to add a curve repeater and increase the count. Now I can change the curve, make these feathers more wing-shaped. And then I'll change the radius so I can taper the one end. And increase the count a little more so they're touching. I want to add the randomize feature, but only with scale and by a very small amount, just so they don't look too consistent. And now what I'm doing is just selecting the individual sphere and pushing it around. I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to these feathers. Then I want to add a little bit of a frame to help with the transition between the feathers and the bow, so I'll use a tube. Let's just taper those ends of the tube so that it's a little bit more elegant. Then I'll change the profile to just be square. Now that I'm happy with his feathers, I can join children of the repeater. And then I can use the move tool kind of big and push each feather around individually. My goal is to just add a little bit of variation to these feathers. I'll just increase the division of the shape I made and validate it. Flare out this armor a little more so this transition isn't as harsh. So I'll just go in with the move tool and push it out. Now that I'm happy with it overall, I need to add a spot where the strings. And I'll just use a tube and rotate it by 90 degrees. I'll wind up using the shape to boolean out a little hole for the string. I mean, the string is just going to be elastic cord, but you get it. I'll slide that down into the mirror so it's on both sides. Make sure I have the right shape selected, and take those two shapes and boolean them out. You can take everything that's in the mirror and join it. Everything is 5 million vertices, and that is a lot. So I'm going to save and decimate everything and cross my fingers that it doesn't crash. Yay, it did it! That was a relief. Let's keep decimating it so it's a reasonable size. Now I can boolean it all together without it crashing. It's pretty good. I just want to boolean together the handle, but it fails. And I think it failed because I trimmed it, so I'm just going to voxel remesh it with sharp edges enabled, and that should fix my problem. Now I can boolean it together successfully. I'll just decimate it one more time, 2 more times. Double check the quality is still there. Name this layer what it is, the bow. And I could save it as an STL, as is, but I want to color this in Nomad. So I'm going to use a nifty trick that my friend Darren taught me. It's masking face groups. It's pretty easy, it's just that little icon up there in the menu. And it works pretty easily, especially if you've booleaned things together already, or voxel remesh them together. So what I want to do with these wings is just make them white. And then make sure global material is turned off when you do this, and then paint all. And then you can't see it when it's like this. But those wings, even though they were white before, they are white again. And then I'll invert the mask. Make sure global material is turned off. And then paint all. Now, the shaft of the bow is gold. So if I turn off the mask and clear it completely, you got a gold bow with white wings. You can really go ham with this coloring technique, but I just want to print in 2 colors. So in order to do that, I have to save it as an OBJ. Now I can export it. Alright, let's slice this bad boy. So we're going to import it, and since we saved it as an OBJ, it imports the colors that we so lovingly painted it. Now I'll just resize this so it is 1,000 millimeters long. And you can see how lovely the paint job is. But none of this matters, because when we chop it up like we usually do, it completely removes all the painting. So I'm just going to repair it. And, well, the painting's gone, and that's okay. I just wanted to teach a concept. I'm just going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and then tilt it back by 30 degrees. I'm going to chop it up into little pieces. We're going to use the same technique where we'll add connectors. And I'll make sure to place uncut. And then once again, I'll rotate the bow back by 30 degrees. Then 250 millimeters kind of cuts the handle in half, so I'm actually going to separate it before the handle starts. There's a nice little point here that can hide the seam. Then I'll add another hexagon connector. I'll do the same for the top of the handle. But to discern between the different areas, I'm going to use a triangle this time. Now to do the final cut, I'll rotate the last piece by 30 degrees, then flip it around by 180 degrees. Then I trim it by 250 millimeters, and then once again adding triangle connectors. Now that I have all the pieces that will fit on the build plate, for some reason it arranged everything but this little guy, so I'm just going to move him manually. I'll rotate it 180 degrees. Then what I want to do is restore the paint differential that I so lovingly added in Nomad. So Bamboo Studio has a painting tool, so I'm just going to use a fill bucket on the wings. And I'll change the value of the smart fill angle, just so I got all of it. And then I'll just change the intensity so I can paint this area gold again. Then while I'm here, I'll just add some support to this little triangle bit, because it will definitely fail unless it's supported. I'll just do the same thing to this other half. Just so it's not color changing all the way up, I'm going to add another plate. Just print these two tall guys on their own plate. And this purging tower, it's a little too close to the edge, so I'll move it so it succeeds. Now I want to make sure the strength has an infill of about 10%, and I just chose grid, just so it's structurally solid, and I'll enable the support. Now we can slice it. It looks pretty good to me, so I'll print it. Then I'll slice the wings. They kind of remind me of the Sphinxes from the Neverending Story. You remember that? That's like, that movie was like one of my origin stories. That looks pretty good to me. I'll print that too. Wasn't that fun? Who doesn't like weapons? And I'm actually a big fan of archery. I have practiced it, and I mean, I've never gotten good at it, but it was a lot of fun to make, at least. And I wanted to add wings because wings are great. I don't know. But if you like what I do, hit the like button. If you have any suggestions of what I should make next, comment down below. Or if you just want to give me like words of encouragement, I don't know. I read all the comments. And if you really like what I do, if you haven't already, please subscribe. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.